Well, hello there. Come in out of whatever tonight's weather has decided to be, and let it fall away behind you at the door. I've been up in the astronomy section this evening, and I'm glad of it, because I came down with something rather lovely tucked under my arm. Slim little book, dust along the top edge, a boy in a spacesuit stitched into the cover in faded gold thread. Get comfortable, dear insomniac. This one's called A Voyage Across the Milky Way, and I think you'll like where it takes you. Far out past the edge of everything familiar, past the last blue-green planet anyone back home would recognize, there travelled a small silver ship called the Whisper. It wasn't the biggest ship ever built. It wasn't the fastest either, though it liked to think it was on a good day. But it was clever, and it was kind, and it loved nothing so much as it loved its pilot, a boy named Kai, 11 years old, with dark tousled hair that never quite sat flat under his helmet, and eyes that had looked at more stars than most people see in a lifetime, and still hadn't gotten tired of a single one. Kai had been travelling for as long as he could properly remember, not running from anything, and not exactly hurrying toward anything either. Just journeying, out across the great curling arm of the galaxy they called the Milky Way, because someone, a very long time ago, had looked up and thought it looked like something spilled. Kai liked that. He liked that the biggest thing anybody had ever seen got a name that small and homely. There is no true morning out where Kai travelled. No sun to rise, no proper dawn to speak of. But Kai and the Whisper had their own idea of one anyway, and that was good enough for both of them. It arrived whenever Kai woke and stretched, and the Whisper brought the cabin lights up soft and gold, gentle as a sunrise neither of them had ever actually seen happen. "Good morning, Whisper," Kai said, stretching in his seat. "Good morning, Kai," said the ship, in the warm, unhurried voice it kept for mornings, real or invented. "You were dreaming? You kicked the console twice? Was I flying? You're always flying in your dreams. You dream rather boring dreams for a boy who lives among the stars." Kai laughed and pulled up the front viewport shade, and there it was, the same impossible view that never once, not on a single morning, failed to catch him somewhere just under the ribs. Stars. More stars than a person could count if they spent their whole life trying, scattered thick as spilled sugar across a black so deep it seemed to have no bottom to it at all. Ribbons of pale colour drifted between them, soft purples, faint greens, the ghost blue of nebulae so far away their light had been travelling longer than Kai had been alive. Some of them curled like smoke. Some of them hung still as painted glass. It didn't matter that Kai had seen it every morning for years. It felt every single time like the first. "Where to today?" Kai asked, though he already half knew the answer, because he asked it every morning, and the answer was always some small variation on onward. "Onward," said the Whisper. "There's a stretch out there today I think you'll like. I've been saving it." "You say that every day." "And every day I'm right." Kai grinned and settled back into his seat, and the little ship eased forward through the dark, quiet as its name, leaving the faintest thread of glimmer behind it that faded before it had even finished appearing. They passed a nebula that morning, shaped like an open hand, pale pink fading to violet at the fingertips, and Kai pressed his palm flat against the cool glass of the viewport, as though he might, if he timed it exactly right, reach through and touch it back. They passed a cluster of young stars still wrapped in the loose gauze of the cloud that had made them, blue-white and blazing, so bright that the whisper dimmed the cabin lights on its own, so Kai could watch properly. They passed a slow, tumbling field of ice and rock, each piece catching starlight at a different angle, so that for a full hour the whole of the dark around them seemed to be full of tiny drifting lanterns. "Whisper," Kai said, watching them turn. "Do you think anybody else has ever seen this? Exactly this field today, looking like this?" "I think it's entirely possible no one ever has," said the whisper. "And no one ever will again. It'll look different tomorrow. Everything out here does if you wait long enough." Kai thought about that for a while, chin propped on his hand, watching the ice turn slow silver circles in the dark. He liked that thought. He liked being the only one in the whole history of everyone to see a particular stretch of stars on a particular morning. It didn't make him lonely. It made the universe feel like it was showing him something, especially the way you'd show a good secret to a friend you trusted. That was the shape of most days out there, for Kai in the whisper. Wonder, quietly stacked on wonder, mile after mile of it, with no rush at all to get anywhere in particular. Space did not care about hurry. Kai had learned over the years not to either. But there was one thing Kai hadn't seen in a very long time. Longer than he liked to admit, if he was honest with himself, which he usually was. Other people. Not that he minded exactly. The whisper talked to him plenty, and asked good questions, and never once ran out of patience for his. But every so often, drifting past some slow and silent stretch of stars, Kai found himself wondering whether there was anyone else out here at all. Whether the whole galaxy was really just him and his small silver ship and an awful lot of very beautiful, very empty dark. He never said this out loud. It wasn't a sad thought, not quite. Just a small, quiet one, the kind you have at the edges of a long day that drifts off again on its own if you let it. Then, one morning, a morning that started out exactly like all the others, gold light and stretching and the whisper teasing him gently about his dreams. Everything changed. "Kai," said the whisper, and something in its voice made Kai sit up straight before he'd even finished rubbing the sleep from his eyes. "You'll want to see this." "See what?" "Look up ahead, just there, past the blue star, the bright one." Kai leaned forward, hands braced on either side of the viewport, and squinted out into the dark. At first, he saw nothing but the same scattered stars he saw every morning. Then, slowly, he began to make out shapes, small points of light that didn't flicker the way stars flickered, points that moved, ever so slightly, in formation with one another, drifting together, unhurried, the way a flock of birds might drift on an easy wind. "Whisper," Kai breathed. "Is that a fleet?" said the whisper, and Kai could have sworn the ships sounded almost as astonished as he felt. "Ships, Kai, a whole fleet of them." Kai pressed both hands flat against the glass. They came into view slowly, the way anything enormous comes into view across a distance that large. First just points of light, then shapes, then at last ships. Dozens of them, more than dozens. Great sweeping vessels with sails of pale gold fabric that caught the starlight and held it. Small quick ones that darted between the larger hulls like fish through coral. Ships shaped like shells and ships shaped like leaves. And one, right in the center of the formation, so vast that Kai couldn't see where it ended, even craning his neck against the glass. They were traveling in a long, curving line, unhurried, drifting through the dark, the exact same way. The whisper always drifted, as though hurry were a thing that happened to other people, in other, smaller corners of the universe. "Where do you think they're going?" Kai whispered, though there was no real need to whisper, out here, with nothing but glass and vacuum between him and all that silence. "I don't know," said the whisper. "Somewhere of their own, I'd expect, the same as us." Kai's heart was going very fast. Not with fear. He wasn't frightened, not even a little. It was the good kind of fast, the kind you feel right before something wonderful, when your whole body seems to know before your mind's quite caught up. "Whisper," he said. "Can we get closer? Just a little." "We can get closer," said the whisper, easing them gently forward. "Just a little." They drifted nearer and nearer still, until Kai could see, really see, the ships themselves. Windows glowing warm along their long flanks. Small figures moving behind the glass, going about whatever quiet business ships full of travellers go about, mid-morning, mid-journey, mid-somewhere. And then, in one of those windows, close enough now that Kai could almost make out a face, somebody stopped. Kai's breath caught. The figure in the window was looking right at him. For one long, still moment, nobody moved. Not Kai, not the figure in the window, not even, it seemed, the whole slow-drifting fleet hanging there against the stars, as though the universe itself had paused to see what would happen next. Then Kai lifted his hand and waved. He didn't think about it at first. It simply happened, the way the best things do. His arm went up, and his hand went back and forth, wide and eager and entirely without dignity, the way you wave at somebody you're delighted to see, even though you've never met them and never will again. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then the figure in the window waved back. And then another window lit up with a waving hand, and another. All down the side of the nearest ship, faces appeared at the glass. Some of them looked like Kai, and some of them didn't look like anybody Kai had ever seen before, tall and small and strange and wonderful, in shapes he'd have no name for, and every single one of them was waving. "Whisper," Kai said, laughing now, both hands pressed to the glass, waving with everything he had. "Whisper, they're waving back." "I see it," said the whisper, and its voice had gone soft and warm, in a way Kai had never quite heard before. "I see it, Kai." All along the great fleet, lights began to flash, soft and rhythmic, gold and white, blinking out across the dark in careful little bursts, like the whole formation had decided, together, without a word passed between them, to say hello in the only language that could carry across all that silent, empty distance. Kai waved until his arm ached. He didn't stop. He didn't want to stop. He didn't know who they were. He didn't know where they'd come from, or where they were bound, or whether he'd ever have a single word to describe it properly to anyone ever again for the rest of his life. It didn't matter. For one bright, drifting moment, in the middle of all that vast and quiet dark, Kai was not alone in the universe. He never really had been. He'd simply been between hellos. Slowly, the way all wonderful things eventually gently do, the fleet began to draw away. Not fast, not sudden, just easing onward, back into their own long curve across the stars, bound for whatever quiet corner of the galaxy was waiting for them. the last window Kai could still make out, held a small figure, no bigger at this distance than a single grain of light, still waving, long after everyone else's arms had surely dropped. Kai waved back until he couldn't see the shape at all anymore. Then he kept watching a while longer, just in case. "Well," said the whisper softly, once the fleet had shrunk to a handful of drifting points, and then, at last, to nothing but stars again. "That wasn't in my saved stretch." Kai let out a long breath and found he was smiling so wide his face had started to ache a little in the nicest possible way. "That was better," he said. "That was so much better." "I rather think it was," agreed the whisper. They sat together a while, ship and boy, in the settling quiet where the fleet had been. A quiet that didn't feel empty anymore the way the dark sometimes could, but full instead, the way a room feels after good company has just left it. "Do you think we'll see them again?" Kai asked after a while. "I don't know," said the whisper, turning them gently back onto their course, out toward the wide, unwritten dark ahead. "The galaxy's a very big place, and we're a very small ship, but I didn't think we'd see them the first time either." Kai considered that, watching the fleet's last faint lights fade entirely from view behind them. "I liked knowing they were out there," he said, "even if I never work out who they were." "So did I," said the whisper. And onward they went, boy and ship, small and silver and unhurried, out across the great curling arm of the Milky Way, toward whatever wonder was waiting to be saved for tomorrow. Kai kept one hand resting on the glass a while longer than usual, that morning, just in case, somewhere very far off, somebody was still waving. Behind them, the stars closed back up over the place where the fleet had been, the way water closes over a stone. Ahead of them, whole galleries of nebulae waited, unopened, patient, keeping their colours for whenever Kai's small ship happened to drift close enough to notice. He had a very great deal left to see. And he went to see it, one gentle mile at a time, waving now and then at nothing in particular, just in case, somewhere out in all that generous dark, someone happened to be looking back. I do love that one. I think it's the waving that gets me every time. How little it costs, and how much it means, out there in all that quiet. Let yourself settle now, dear insomniac. Nothing left to hold on to, nothing left to figure out. Just the quiet and the fire, and a warm place to rest for a while. Sleep well.